SMSF income streams are multi-dimensional, meaning advisors and accountants must consider several critical factors when discussing them with their clients. Anthony Cullen from Accurium is with me today to talk about this topic. Hi, Anthony. Thanks for joining me.
Hi, Darren. Thank you for the invite. It's good to see you again.
Okay, well, the first thing I'd like to talk about is actually transition to retirement income streams, often referred to as TRISs. Now, the rules changed for these several years ago, and you can't claim exempt current pension income from them anymore. So if you can't, are they still useful?
Well, absolutely, Darren. It is interesting that we often talk about the fact that they're linked to ECPI and they were predominantly used for that purpose prior to the changes in the law. But we can't overlook why these laws were introduced in the first place. They were really designed for people to be able to cut down on their working hours and supplement that income by being able to access their superannuation to a certain degree. So, if we go back to the reasons behind it, you know, potentially there's still going to be a client base out there that are looking to transition to retirement, literally, as the name suggests. So that would be my starting point for most advisors. But putting that aside as well, um, accessing preserved benefits, generally a trust will, your benefits will be preserved, so limited, but it does create an opportunity to maybe get a start on a withdrawal and recontribution strategy, whether that might be to turn taxable components into tax-free components, or even balancing interest out between a couple. So maybe the older person has more in their interest, take it out, contribute it to the younger or the lower balance. And that might have benefits from a transfer balance cap point of view. So when you are ready to go into retirement phase, you're equal or close to being equal in terms of both being under the cap. And dare I say it, it might be a way of reducing somebody's balance from a Div 296 point of view and diverting that money to the spouse who may not be in that same field. So definitely there's still some options there to consider when it comes to TRISs, and it's not always about tax for the super fund.
Yeah, some really good points there, Anthony. Now, speaking of ECPI, an account-based pension is a retirement income stream that is eligible for ECPI, but often people make mistakes that actually prevent them from claiming it. What are some of the common errors you see here?
Well, the biggest mistake obviously is not meeting the pension standard. So generally not meeting the minimum requirement. When you're taking an account-based pension, depending on your age, you've got a certain percentage of your pension interest that you must draw as a pension payment. And so we often see clients failing to meet that minimum standard, and that will mean that you lose your ECPI attached to that. And so a lot of this comes back to record keeping, and what the professionals, whether it's advisors or accountants, what they're doing to track and keep on top of the pension payments. And so I've always been an advocate for doing financial accounts or preparing accounts, on a monthly basis or a quarterly basis. But I've been in the industry long enough that I remember the days when everybody was doing annual accounts. But that doesn't work now. If you're doing, last year's accounts today, how are you able to provide that advice or guidance to your clients about you haven't met your minimum requirement yet? We're getting to that stage of the year that we should be contacting our clients saying, don't forget to take your minimum out and put everything back on the trustee to make sure payments are made. But even when you're getting that feedback, I've also seen situations where there's an unidentified transaction and you go back to the client and say, oh, yeah, that's a pension payment. And you add that to the list. Like, all right, well, based on that, you've met your minimum requirement. And now here you are 9 months later doing the 25 accounts and go, oh, that payment, you said it's a pension payment. You just transferred that to the super fund's other bank account. It never left the fund, or you used it to acquire an asset. So it's one thing to get a client to confirm that they believe they've taken pension payments, but are we actually verifying? Or are we just going, yep, we take their word for it, and then we'll work out that there's a problem 9 months down the track. So just keeping on top of things, having a system that you know what's going on. And as I mentioned, we're getting to that stage, just a general prompt to the clients to say, look, don't forget, you've got to take the payments and you've only got a couple of months to do it. And please don't leave it till 30th of June. Get it done early.
Now, you did mention that one of the common errors is not meeting the minimum pension payment standard, which prevents people from claiming ECPI. And of course, tax ruling 2013/5 changed the whole way that pensions work in that sort of regard. So, if members do find themselves in a position where they have failed to meet the minimum pension requirement, what should they do?
uh, Act immediately. So the ruling, the ATO say it's not really a change in their view on it. It's just making it clearer to what their view was. So historically, the industry would take this approach that if a member has failed to meet the minimum requirement in any given year, you wouldn't claim ECPI for that year, and we would just reset their pension on 1st of July for the next year. And we move on, we get ECPI from that date onwards. The ATO have made it very clear now that their view is that from a SIS point of view, the pension can't be satisfying the pension requirements until the member has consciously commuted that pension and requested the commencement of a new pension. And so if we're doing 24, 25 accounts today and we identify that there's a shortfall and that pension ceases, from a tax point of view, it ceased on the 1st of July 2024. But from an ECPI point of view, we can't just say, oh, we'll reset it on 1 July 2025. If we're only making the client aware of it today, well, then today is the earliest that they can consciously commute it and restart it. So there's, 8 months of ECPI that they've lost this financial year. And we would never encourage backdating. So if somebody was to come to us today and say, can we reset it on 1 July? Absolutely not. Right? Today is the first day that you're aware of it. Today is the first day that you can actually do something about it. And given that ruling changed in July 2024, the 24-25 year is the first real financial year that this becomes an issue that we need to be very mindful of. But we are still getting questions. There is still a number of people in the industry that still believe that, I'm not going to say they believe we can do the other way, they're not necessarily aware of the changes to the ruling, and so still want to do things the way that we've always done it. So there's still this education that is required from the professionals to understand what the rules, the ATO's view is, and then we need to pass that on to the client. And it goes back to the previous question. The more we can put it back on our client, making them aware that they've got minimum requirements to meet, the less that they can come back and say, well, you didn't tell me. All right, this is your fault. We want to be able to absolve ourselves of any reason for them to blame us. And so the more we did everything. We prompted you. We told you. So put it back on the trustees. They become responsible for their own actions.
Yep, there's nothing fairer than that, I don't think, Anthony. Now, one of the things that we're eagerly awaiting and looking forward to, I should say, is the increase of the general transfer balance cap to $2.1 million from 1 July 2026. With this imminent change, what sort of strategic opportunities should financial advisors be looking at for their clients?
Well, I guess there's probably two angles that you can look at this from. So when we're talking about transfer balance caps, we're obviously talking about pension accounts. So from that angle, if we've got a client who is looking to start a pension, whether it's the first time they're starting or topping up with a new pension, we're getting close to that point where, well, when do we start that pension? If we just stick with brand new clients, got access to currently a $2 million cap, is there benefit in holding off starting that pension so they potentially have access to $2.1 million? Now, it's not going to be a set and fit, well, not set, but it's not going to be a one size fits all. Obviously, by delaying that pension, you might get access to a higher personal transfer balance cap. But by not starting a pension, you're also the fund is potentially missing out on exempt current pension income. So there's a little bit of a trade-off there, and it might be a matter of crunching the numbers. If I am willing to forego ECPI this year by delaying that pension commencement, uh, how long will it be before I can claw that ECPI back? Is it worth it? And that comes down to a number of factors. What sort of income are you expecting this year? Do you have some large capital gains that you want that ECPI? It may even come down to if somebody started a pension today, they might be, let's say, just under $2 million, 100% of their pension can go into retirement phase today. But if they delay it going, oh, there might be some market movement, I'll go to 2.1. But what happens if your account ends up at $2.2 million? All of a sudden, you're not 100% in pension mode. So going forward, you've lost some ECPI as well. So it's really a matter of crunching the numbers, looking at each client's individual circumstances and what fits for them. It's not a one size fits. And from the second side of it as well, there's a flow on impact from the general transfer balance cap to non-concessional contributions, in particular, the bring forward rule. So in addition to the increase in the general transfer balance cap, we're also going to see an increase in the concessional contribution cap, which then flows through to an increase in the non-concessional contribution cap. And so what a lot of people aren't necessarily aware of is if I am looking to trigger the bring forward rule, if I trigger the bring forward rule today or this financial year, then I'm not necessarily going to get access to that increase in the non-concessional cap next year. And so once again, looking at the client circumstances, there may be benefits in not triggering the bring forward rule this year, maybe putting in $120,000 and then potentially having access to putting in $390,000 next year, as opposed to if I trigger the bring forward rule this year, even if I don't put the full 360 in, next year I'm only going to be able to top up to that $360,000 limit. So by spacing out and timing your non-concessional contributions, you may be able to get more in a shorter period of time by not triggering the bring forward rule. But once again, you do need to be careful. You hold off and delay, and you might find that your total super balance goes up to a point where you can't trigger the bring forward rule, or you can only do 1 year or 2 years. So crunch the numbers, look at what's going on, look at availability to get money into super, and just be mindful that just getting everything in now is not necessarily going to be the best thing. But at the same token, delaying may not be best for all as well.
Yeah, that's the classic "it depends"
Oh,
scenario.
100%. And I'm not a lawyer. I'm not sure that I'm allowed to say that. But it's not only is it depends, but it's also it's not a one size fits all. We've got to treat our clients as individuals, and their circumstances are different to the next client. And we've got to make sure that we're servicing our clients based on their circumstances, based on their needs, rather than I'm just going to put everybody into the same basket.
Some great insights there, Anthony, and thank you very much for sharing them with us today.
Yeah, no problems. Thank you, Darren. I know we've only just scratched the surface, but there's a lot to unpack there.
Anthony will be exploring the subject of pensions in more detail at the SMSF Professionals Day 2026, co-hosted by Self-Managed Super and Accurium. It's a 3-city roadshow event kicking off in Sydney on the 19th of May and concluding in Brisbane on the 25th of May. There will also be an online component. To find out more about the event and register for it, please reference the details you can see on your screen right now. Look, great to see you again, Anthony, and I can't wait to find out more about this topic at the SMSF Professionals Day.
Thank you, Darren. Looking forward to catching up in person.